Hey guys, Emily here. Welcome to another wrap up. Today I'm wrapping up my reading from July, which is actually like way more than I've read in the past little bit because of the booktubeathon. I do have a booktubeathon reflections video. I will link that down below. Let's start with the very beginning of July. Oh hi! So when I sat down to edit, I realized that I had also read Eliza and Her Monsters by Francesca Zappia. So it is a really hyped YA book about a young girl who is illustrating an online graphic novel series, an online comic series, and it has taken off and people are like fanatical about this series. Her parents view her as incredibly antisocial. They're constantly trying to push her to do like outdoor sporty things. They really don't get this whole online community, online friendship thing. The story really kicks off when Eliza comes to interact with one of the largest fan fiction creators for her comic book series in real life. And I think why it is so popular is that it really captures this sort of online space that we're all sort of a part of if we're engaging in this platform, engaging in Tumblr blogs, in fan fiction, that kind of stuff, all of that sort of bookish fandom stuff that we do. Overall, I didn't super love it. Like, I didn't love it enough to buy it. Like, I understand the online fandom experience. It was really cool to see that represented in literature. It is a cute story. It's a cute idea. It's a relevant idea, but it wasn't like mind-blowing for me. In the beginning of July, I read the book club book, The Best Kind of People by Zoe Whittall. Now this is the book that I picked for this month. My book club last year met more regularly. It's a group of friends who are interested in reading and discussing and doing like some sort of meaty analysis that we don't get anymore now that we're out of school. This is the story of a small town community, especially that of the Woodbury family, whose world is rocked after the father husband George is accused of sexually assaulting his students. He is a well-loved teacher within this small town community. He is affluent. He's like a stand-up guy involved in committees in the church. The whole town is shaken and divided. And it brings up a lot of really interesting discussions about rape culture and privilege, and also the ways in which we feel like we know other people when we can never truly know other people. So if you're interested in sort of thinking through what exactly is rape culture and thinking through human dynamics, family dynamics, then I would highly, highly recommend that you pick this up because it was really fruitful. And I would definitely recommend if you have a book club for yourself or you read with a partner, you read with a friend and you discuss, I think this would make for some interesting discussion. The next book I read, highly hyped book here on YouTube, and it's totally worth it, and that is Every Heart a Doorway by Seanan McGuire. It's addressing the idea of what happens to kids who actually come back from the magical world. So it's playing with Portal Fantasy. Portal Fantasy, we have an outside character sort of step from our primary world into the secondary world, and we're introduced to that secondary world through their tourist eyes, right? And oftentimes, like in Narnia, we see these characters go into this space, make a home there, and like the kids in Narnia grow up, they become kings and queens, rulers, right? And then they come back through the wardrobe and they're children again, they have no power, and we're just assuming that they adjust and go on with their lives. So what McGuire does is similar premise. These kids go into this magical world, but when they come back, they don't readjust. They found a home in this other space. Just because they're so homesick for this fantasy space, they end up in a home for wayward children in which they either choose to sort of move past and live with this experience or sort of dwell melancholically on it. Is that a word, melancholically? I'm making it a word. And they live in hope of one day returning to this world for whatever reason. I think it's a really interesting look at fantasy literature, at Portal Fantasy. We have some diverse characters in here. We have some LGBTQIA plus representation, which is something that fantasy desperately needs. And I thought it was amazing. This is what I want to see from the fantasy genre. These kinds of narratives that think through what exactly previous books in the genre have done and what that would actually do. The next book I read was A Monster Calls, a novel by Patrick Ness, inspired by Siobhan Dowd and illustrated by Jim Kay. Jim Kay does the illustrations for the new illustrated Harry Potter books, if you're wondering. Because I looked at that name and I was like, why is that so familiar? It's the illustrated Harry Potter books. This is friggin' gorgeous. I am a little bit on the dark side myself. I love these sort of dark, moody things. There are so many prints in here that I would just love to have, like, framed. Make big prints of them and frame them. Like, they are beautiful. This is the story of Connor, whose mother is sick with cancer, and at the same time that like real world things are happening to his mother, he is also having this magical experience with a yew tree. So a yew tree comes to life as this huge monstrous form, and it tells him 3 stories over 3 nights and teaches him 3 lessons. I wept openly in public reading this book. That has been a theme in my life recently, weeping openly. I don't want to say more because I don't want to spoil the experience of this dark modern fairy tale, I think are the 3 keywords I would throw with this. So if you like dark stuff, if you like modern fairy tales, I think this will click all your buttons, and I can't recommend this enough. I loved this. The next book I finished has been sitting on my TBR for a while, since my master's thesis actually, because I read to the part that was relevant to me and then stopped, and I decided, you know what, Emily, you're gonna finish this. So this is the Rhetorics of Fantasy by Farah Mendelsohn. Farah Mendelsohn is a huge name in in fantasy, sci-fi academia right now. This is her book sort of mapping and thinking through the different types of fantasy literature there is. It is helpful if you are interested in fantasy, if you're interested in thinking through the mechanics of the genre, and especially if you're doing any sort of academic research, I would highly recommend this. In terms of pleasure, it wasn't the most pleasurable read, but it was a really informative, helpful read. The next book I read is the prequel to Every Heart a Doorway. This is Down Among the Sticks and Bones, also by Seanan and McGuire. This focuses on 2 of the characters that we meet in Every Heart a Doorway, the twins Jack and Jill, and their experience going into the magical world. So we see them in the portal space, the portal fantasy space of the moors, and we sort of get a sense of what a fantasy space can be like. Again, it's kind of dark because they go into the moors, a space in which vampires and, like, it's a very gothic space that they go into, and that just tickles my fancy. So I really, really enjoyed this, and after reading these 2, I ended up pre-ordering the 3rd book that is coming out in January or February. Yeah, I actually pre-ordered it because I liked it that much and I do want to get my hands on it. The next book I finished was on audio, but I'm going to hold up the book just to show. So I have been listening to the audiobooks on my commute to work every day, and I randomly picked and finished Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix. Every time I read this, I have a new appreciation for Neville as a character and just how he's grown. Like, we learn about Neville's parents in this book, we see Neville tag along at the end and, like, be really brave. The next thing I have here is an arc that I picked up at the Chapters Indigo Christmas party. Publishers just sent a whole bunch of things that we were allowed to take whatever we wanted. This is Philip Pullman's The Adventures of John Blake, a Mystery of the Ghost Ship, illustrated by Fred Fordham. So this is a graphic novel series in which there is a magical ship that sort of picks up wrecked people from all throughout time, and there's some sort of government plot that I won't get into, and then we have the magical ship. It has, in theory, interesting things happening, but I just couldn't get into it, and, like, the art style is not, like, super great. It's not bad, but it's also not, there's nothing really special about the art style, and so I think this could be fun for some readers. There's definitely elements of it that I really liked, but all in all, it just wasn't for me, and I didn't super enjoy this, and I probably won't continue with the series. Now we get into my booktubeathon reads. I read Feminist Manifesto in 15 Suggestions by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. So this is 15 suggestions on how to raise your child feminist. Kind of preaching to the choir. I wasn't, like, blown away by any of these things. I did enjoy it. There were a couple of lines that I underlined here and there because I was like, yeah, that's a really powerful way of stating this thing that I already believe. Any of these things, I did enjoy it. There were a couple of lines that I underlined here and there because I was like, yeah, that's a really powerful way of stating this thing that I already believe. And I think I would definitely gift this to parents, because I think we really, without even thinking about it, gender our children, and I'm not sure that like forcing gender roles onto children is a great idea. The next book I read was If I Was Your Girl by Meredith Russo. This is the story of Amanda, a trans girl who has transitioned at her old high school and has now moved to a new high school across state. Nobody knew her before, so nobody questions her femininity. So she is just readily accepted as this gorgeous hot girl and treated like a girl. So she's hit with extreme sexism by people who identify her the way she sees herself, a woman. At the same time, we get to see, for those who knew her before, in sort of flashback phases, we get to see the transphobia as well. So people who insist on misgendering her and behaving violently towards her. And so it's an interesting look at both. It's one of those things because a lot of people will never live in this position. There are a whole bunch of unearned privileges that we have that we don't even think about. I thought it was really well done. I know this has won a Stonewall Award, so clearly other people who can speak on this issue agree that this is a great narrative for teens. I would highly recommend this. This was really good. The next book I read as part of the Booktubeathon was In the Hand of the Goddess by Tamora Pierce. Now I am rereading Tamora Pierce's body of works in publication order. This is her second work. This is a story of Alana in her years as a squire. It was a really fun reread. Again, what I'm struck by, because I guess normally I marathon the quartet in one day, reading them spread out, I am struck by how big time jumps are in this thing. Like all of a sudden, like you read a chapter and Alana's 15, then you read like another 2 chapters later, she's turned 16, and you're like, oh, a full year passed in those 2 chapters. I did really enjoy this. This is still a childhood favorite of mine, and I would recommend checking this out too. I think I've said that about basically every single book that I've picked up. The next book I picked up here is Juniper Lemon's Happiness Index by Julie Israel. This was the book that Ariel recommended that we all sort of read together. Cover is friggin' gorgeous, but the book was a little lackluster. So this is the story of Juniper Lemon, whose sister Camilla has died in a car accident. The two of them were in a car accident together. Juniper lived, Camilla passed away. Everything sort of kicks off when Juniper discovers a letter to her sister's secret partner. Nobody knew who her sister was dating, but this letter was meant to go to someone on the night of the accident as a breakup letter. So Juniper is trying to learn more about her sister's life, trying to figure out this puzzle. Along the way, she ends up discovering some other secrets and sort of making some new friends and making some new connections. And I think overall, like, I was expecting more of a text dealing with grief than anything, and it didn't really deal with grief at all. Like, Juniper is surprisingly okay with her sister being dead. Like, and I don't know if that's because she's so focused on solving this mystery that she's really not grieving in a way that I would expect someone to grieve if you were in the car with your sister when she died. I think that's in part why I didn't like it, because it felt like a silly teen mystery, like a silly teen drama, and it didn't deal with the grief as much as I wanted it to. That was my lowest rated book from the Booktubeathon. The next book I have here is On the Other Side by Carrie Hope Fletcher. Carrie Hope Fletcher is a YouTuber. I love her videos. They are so hopeful and joyful, and she's just such an eloquent young person that I wanted to support her. I wanted to see what her books were like. So this is the story of Evie Snow, a woman who has passed on, and she's in some sort of purgatory between living and heaven. The wall between life and death is sort of semi-permeable. If your soul is too weighed down with secrets or regrets, you can't pass on to heaven until you have dealt with those secrets. And it was a really interesting concept. I thought it was really well done. I liked the sort of magical realism aspect of it, and all around it was a really great read, and it was really cute. So I was happy. I was happy with this choice. I was happy with this decision. The next thing that I read was Been Here All Along by Sandy Hall. This is a really cute piece of queer YA in which neighbors and longtime best friends, Gideon and Kyle, start to figure out what exactly they feel for each other. Are they friends? Are they more than friends? Because Kyle is dating a girl right now. Kyle is bisexual. Gideon has always just assumed that he would date in college. It was really cute. I really, really enjoyed this book, and it was such a quick read. I would highly recommend picking this up if you haven't already. And then the last book I have here, I don't want to say too much about because it is the conclusion to the Raven Cycle. The Raven King by Maggie Stiefvater is the 4th book in the Raven Cycle. It concludes Blue and the Raven Boys' adventures with the ley lines. I love Maggie Stiefvater's writing style. I just love how dark and magical it is. I love the women of 300 Fox Way, and that is one of the reasons why I have loved the series so much, is this like strong lady family. They're not all biologically related. They're sort of a found family as well of psychics living in a house. They are so loving and supportive, and it's rare, I think, in literature to see such a female-centric space. It was a great way to wrap up the Booktubeathon. It was a great way to wrap up the month, and I am a very happy camper. So these are the books that I read in July. Let me know in the comments down below what your favorite read from July was. I don't anticipate August being a really great reading month just because I'm also copy editing a book right now, and that takes priority. Chat with me in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you soon. Bye.